Hi, this is Zibby Owens, and you're listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. In my daily show, I interview today's latest best-selling, buzziest, or underrated authors and story creators whose work I think is worth your time. As a bookstore owner, publisher, author, and obviously podcaster, I get a comprehensive look at everything that's coming out and spend my time curating the best books so you don't have to. Stay in the know, get insider insights, and connect with guests like I do every single day. For more information, go to zibbymedia.com and follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens. Jordan Roeder is the author of Moms Like Us, a novel. Jordan is a published novelist, screenwriter, and TV writer-producer. She adapted her second novel, Camp Rules, into a feature for Paramount and set up several features after that based on original ideas, formats, and books, as well as rewrites and roundtable punch-ups for studios, streamers, and financiers. Most recently in features, she sold a high-concept, female-driven comedy feature pitch to Netflix. On the TV side, Jordan has created and developed comedies and dramedies for broadcast and streaming. She has been a writer on the ABC comedy American Housewife, and most recently a co-producer on the free-form thriller The Watchful Eye. Most recently in TV development, Jordan adapted hit Korean format Oh My Ghost into a supernatural dramedy called Into You for Blumhouse Studio Dragon, and developed an original multi-generational family comedy for ABC Signature. Currently, Jordan is adapting an hour-long TV adaptation of the novel Stone Cold Fox for UTV, and Julie Plek's My So-Called Company. Jordan's third novel, a female-driven satire called Moms Like Us, was published by Little A, which is actually where Blank and Bookends My Books are published too. Jordan was raised in Manhattan and now lives in LA with her husband, kids, and their dog Alfie. Welcome, Jordan. Thank you so much for coming on Totally Booked with Zibby to talk about Moms Like Us, a novel. Congratulations.
Thank you so much, Zibby. I'm so happy to be here.
Well, I sort of inhaled this book right when it first arrived. So forgive me if I mess up anybody's names. With this full cast of characters, I feel like I watched a little sitcom, and not sitcom, but like a limited series or something in my head about like this whole community. So thank you for that. I got a lot of entertainment out of it, and we'll never look at, the parking lot at the grocery store in quite the same way again. So thanks.
At Trader Joe's. Yeah.
At Trader Joe's. Yeah. We have a Trader Joe's right by my kid's school. And now I'm like, what are moms doing around there?
What's really happening there in the minivans when they're rocking? I don't know.
Okay, talk about, what is your book about?
So, the book starts with a murder, as any good satire does. So when someone ends up dead at this private school's annual glamping trip in Santa Barbara, we go back through the school year and we follow these four Los Angeles private school moms who really would do anything to protect their kids and their secrets. And we kind of, are trying to figure out throughout the book who died. How did they die? And everyone kind of has a motive. So it's got a little bit of that, Big Little Lies vibe, and also Glass Onion a little bit. I hope those were the goals. And when you said, that it felt like a TV show, that's really great to hear because I'm a TV writer.
That's right. So
and a feature writer. And so I really wrote it with the intention of it being a show. And so I'm really happy that it read like a show, because that's important.
Why didn't you write it as a show?
Well, I wrote it during the writer's strike. And so, and I had actually started writing it before that. I had a really frustrating back to school night when my daughter was in 6th grade, and was one of those back to school nights that I just left feeling really like useless as a mother. And and frustrated with the school, and frustrated with the administration, and feeling like I wasn't doing enough. And so I started writing it that next morning, and this was 4 years ago. And then I shelved it. It was like therapy, and I hadn't written a novel in 15 years. So I'd been writing for TV and film. So then it was the writer's strike, and my book agent, who I've stayed friends with, was like, hey, great time to write a book. And I happened to be in Santa Barbara on the school glamping trip at that time. So that's kind of how it all happened.
So interesting.
Yeah.
Okay. So who did you want to be murdered?
Sadly, there are a lot of people that I was frustrated with. I don't know that I want anybody murdered. I'll just say that.
Okay.
I will also say that we share an editor,
Yes.
and I wanted to call the book Milk, Mothers I'd Like to Kill. And Carmen was like, that's adorable. No. She was like, definitely not. And I was like, but it's not like they want to it's not mothers I'd like to actually kill. It's like, I want to kill her. Like, it's like I'm frustrated. Like but yeah, she was not having
No.
that.
Okay. Well, I like this title, Moms Like Us. That's because, everybody feels related to that. Sarah
Yes,
Harmon has
it's
this
a
book
little
out.
aggressive, the other one.
Yeah. There's this book that just came out, All the Other Mothers Hate Me, or something
Yeah.
like that, right? It's sort of in the same, like, this like inner world of competitive moms and the dance
Yes.
that so many people do, and exposing that thing.
Well, I also think that there's really like there's this moment in time that there's two things going on. It's like this, so much truth telling about what it's like really like. All these memoirs, The Mother Lode, The Tell is coming out and getting
Yes.
I'm so excited to read. I haven't read it, but I've read about it.
Mhm.
And, with All Fours, it's like this, it's like I feel, and you talked about this in your podcast with your most anticipated books when you first started talking about that. And you're like, why do I keep gravitating toward these, perimenopause, menopause, women talking about what it's really like, this like the radical truth telling of
Mhm.
what it is like to be, a woman, a mom, working, not working, expectations, juggling it all. And it's like, I feel like we're in this moment now where it's okay to say, like, to say your true feelings without being judged for it
Mhm.
necessarily. And that was really my goal in writing this was like, because honestly, I have a lot of like awful thoughts. And it doesn't mean that like I actually am ever going to say those out loud. But when I read things about women who share some of those thoughts, I feel less alone. So, and I'm like, oh, I'm not like a terrible person. I just had this thought and, kind of like a ticker, it went past and it's
Mhm.
okay. It doesn't necessarily make me a bad person.
But
And
Jordan, what if you are a bad person?
you know what? I could be.
And
Nobody's saying I'm
you're
not.
just surrounding yourself with other bad people to make yourself feel better. Maybe there's that.
That could be it. That could be it. And by the way, that's a great idea. But so when I was writing this, like my thing was like, especially for the women who I was writing about who really like annoyed me and I was frustrated by, I wanted to get into their head and I wanted to understand why they might be behaving the way they were behaving
Mhm.
and find some sort of like humanity and something that I could like about them.
Mhm.
And hopefully I found that. Hopefully, all the women aren't, there's something to like and something human about all of them. That was kind of the goal. But I also wanted to take some of the terrible thoughts that I've had and amplify them like by 30 and then, and kind of see where that took me. And it was
And it
very
turns out it took you into a lesbian relationship with the headmaster.
that's right.
Should we maybe explore this a little bit?
Well, it's funny. I was talking to my friends, Jessica Dell, who are two women who are married, and I was talking to them a lot about because I really wanted Millie's first experience kissing, Eva to feel real. And I have not kissed a woman. And so we had like these very, very in-depth conversations. And it was really great. But it was so funny because Jessica looked at me at some point in our conversation. She's like, are we lesbian? Maybe she's like, maybe you are interested. And I was like, I mean, I'm interested. I'm writing about it, but it was like, yeah, it was great to like really have that conversation with them. And I learned a lot. So
It seemed very authentic, but what do I know?
thank you.
But not to what's the word? Not to exclude regular romps because you have plenty of those as well.
Oh my God, so many of those. And you know, I like so my daughter is dyslexic and she does not love like she's an audible listener, audible
Yep.
learner. So she was like, and she doesn't love reading because she had such a hard time getting into it, which was a little bit like heartbreaking for me. But at first, but now it's actually great because we read like a lot of her books for school together. And like we read Cannery Row and like it's been so fun. But she was asking if she could read it. And I was like, I don't know if that's the best idea. I think it's going to be a little too cringy. I think she won't get very far.
No. So that's the good news.
Yeah, that is the good news. And my son has no interest. He's 12 and he's like, nah. Yeah.
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 But what do you think, like, moms in your community, right? Because you do poke fun at like the whole school and all the different sort of mom archetypes, if you will,
Yes.
different ways. And of course, every population has people who skew one way or the other, into some of the characteristics that you and your characters sort of imbue. So I don't know, is there anyone you're particularly afraid of seeing at drop off, having read this book? Like,
oh yeah. Yes. Well, not at drop off because especially like the school I was at when I started writing it, I'm no longer at, and I actually really loved that school. I have nothing like, and the school it's based on is 1,000, not 1,000%, but not that school.
okay.
It was actually based on another school that my kids didn't go to. But the experiences and certainly the people was inspired by my experience there. But I did say to Carmen when I agreed to, publish this and we were moving forward with it, I was like, it can't be published until my son gets into 7th grade.
That's so funny.
Because I had such a terrible experience getting my daughter in. And this book was so born out of the trauma of that experience and like going through that experience that I was like, that's why it's coming out in May versus March.
That is so funny. Speaking of Carmen, by the way, I've been changing my next book a lot, and I read your book, and I was like, oh, maybe I could try multiple points of view, right? Like that would make this process go faster. Like I'll just keep.
And so, did you try it?
So I pitched this idea to her, and she was like, "You don't want to try that. Like, no. Don't even go there." And I was like, "Okay, fine." But I appreciated yours. I appreciated because it's essentially like 4 stories, like you're like it has to, and it all has to come together, and it actually is quite complicated.
But it's when I started writing it, I didn't know how it would all, like I started writing it really like just as like these individual kind of stories, and then I weaved them together as time went on. And I kind of figured it out. And one of the storylines, which like talk about like being stressed out about, seeing somebody at drop off or carpool in LA, carpool, is there was the whole tennis club storyline.
Yep.
Did come from like a friend of mine who I actually love, but who had an experience with the tennis club. And that was like the light bulb moment. Because actually there was a time with Ronit was, I don't know if you ever worked with Ronit Wegman. She
Love
was,
it. Yes.
Yeah, she's wonderful. So she and Carmen and I were on a Zoom together, and it was like right after my first draft. And they actually wanted me to get rid of one of the points of view because she wasn't clear enough. And it was funny, once I kind of found that thing for her, the tennis club was part of, it, and it connected her to Heather. And, that was like the key for me. And it was just one moment of, an experience with a friend who had a hard time getting into the tennis club. And it unlocked a whole character for me. So it's like, that's the good thing about writing what is like every time you walk down the street, you get inspiration, or you get some kind of like idea, which is great because I don't go very far. I work from home. My kids go to school nearby. Like I kind of, stay in my lane. So that's good.
So take me back to how you became a writer to begin with. Like
So,
what happened where you grew up? Give me the quick life story.
yeah, New York City, mean streets, the Upper East Side, very tough. Went to Dalton, went to Brown, not well educated at all. And then I wanted to be, so I did sketch comedy in college. And I did stand up. And then I went to New York for 2 years, which was like a lost 2 years. I was so depressed and like couldn't find myself. I was trying to act. I couldn't and then I moved out to LA, and I had always wanted to live in California. I don't like bad weather. I just I always say I never really felt myself in New York, even though I lived there for the first 25 years of my life. And then I moved out here and I made a whole community and life for myself. And I've been here for about 25 years, but I came out here to be an actress and to do some stand up and sketch comedy. And, back then it was a little bit different, but, I was told I was very funny, but that I was not pretty and thin enough to be the leading lady. And I was not fat and ugly enough to be the quirky best friend. And that's all that's all there was then in, 1999, 2000, which doesn't seem that long ago, but in the grand scheme of things, when you look at, who's doing comedy now and who's, it just, I feel like there's a little more room for other types of women to be funny and successful. And it just, and I couldn't handle it. Like I just didn't have a thick enough skin. So I kept doing groundlings at night, and I went into production and development for years. And then I met an agent at a party. I didn't know he was an agent. He's a book agent, Richard Abate. And I was telling him about my experiences as an assistant. And he's like, you should write a young adult novel about it. And I was like, okay. And we sold that off of 50 pages. And that was how I got into writing young adult fiction. And then I wrote another book called Camp Rules, which I then adapted into a feature for Paramount. And that's how I got into feature writing. And then, so I wrote features for a bunch of years, and then I sold my first TV thing. And then I started staffing in TV. And then so I write hour-long dramedies, and I write comedies for television. And I write movies that never get made, and also television pilots that never get made. And then sometimes I get lucky enough to get staffed on a show, and I actually get to make things. And that's really cool. I wrote on this freeform show right before the strike called The Watchful Eye, which I don't think a lot of people saw, but it was so fun. I went to Vancouver, produced my episode. It was awesome.
That is so
cool. It
was
great. So, and now hopefully I'll adapt Moms Like Us. And I have a couple other things, but the novel writing is a lot of work. I don't know how you do it with all the other things that you're juggling.
Yeah, not well, apparently. I just threw out my last draft. So yeah. I was like, oh, I don't like this at all. This is no. Anyway, yeah, I think unless you are a full-time novel writer, which not many people are, you have to find time on the fringes of life, right? When between teaching or your job or your kids or whatever, the days of I don't know, being in a cabin every day and just writing. There's some people who have had enough success that I've interviewed who can do that now, but nobody starts out that way usually, So we all just fit it in, you just have to fit it in.
Well, I also feel like I'm a bit, how they say there's method writers and the method actors. I'm kind of like a method writer where I feel like, I have to kind of go a bit dark if I'm going dark. I have to get into those that kind of mindset. So it's very hard if I'm planning to be working all day from home and then I have a kid homesick who's like,
Yeah.
can you make me a grilled cheese? And I'm like, writing a sex scene in, a minivan, woman cheating on her husband in Trader Joe's. Like, it's really hard to go to those places when you're also momming. It's at least it's hard for me. And so it was really like finding those moments and just saying like, kids, if you need anything, like if they're at school, you have to call your father. Like, I can't have like, and I don't know if you get these texts from your kids. I get a text that's like capital letters, mom.
Yes.
And that's it. And you're like, what is happening? Like what? And then it's like, I got a B plus. Okay, lose my number. Like, come on. This is crazy. I can't do this.
I get a lot of texts that just say answer, period. And I'm like, stop yelling at me. Like I didn't hear it. My ringer was off. What's going on? Are you okay?
Yeah.
And then the other day I was really focusing and trying hard to like write something. Not that and usually I try to take off, close out of my text or whatever, but I didn't. And like my mom was like, I can't figure out this form. Could you just help me with this form? Like, what do I put for this? These two blocks of text or something. And I was like, I don't know. No one's ever asked me that before. Just like make something up or leave it blank. And then I try to go back typing, and then she's like, that's not working. Like, what if I do this? And like I kept going back like 5 times, and finally I just leaned back and I was like, you know what? Like, I can't do this. I can't do this.
No, the best is when my parents forget that I'm on their text chain. So it's like, make sure to get the yogurt with the vanilla and not the thing. And then it's like, did you record Grey's Anatomy? And it's like, guys, I'm on this text chain. It's like, okay, sorry. Anyway, so make sure to fill up the car. And I'm like, guys, I'm on like, please, again, lose my number. Like everyone just lose my number.
That could be the title of your next book.
I was just thinking that.
You should totally do that. That should be your but not fiction. Just like, make it
my memoir.
Like essays, like funny essays about, hashtag mom life or whatever.
I love it. All right. Well, Zibby Publishing.
Okay. I heard you. Can't poach you from Carmen,
Yeah, I know. I don't know that Carmen wants to do a bunch of short stories called Lose My Number, but I love it. I'm like,
That could be fun.
I'm going to go off and write after this.
Okay, yeah, go off and write. I love it. Everybody could relate, I am sure.
Yeah.
Okay, so what are you working on aside from this new book that we came up with? Are you working
on? Aside from this new book we just came up with, so I'm actually pitching the adaptation of another book right now. It's called Stone Cold Fox. It came out a couple of years ago.
Yeah.
And so I'm working on that with Julie Pleck's company. She's a big TV writer, director. I actually worked with her a million years ago when I was an assistant to Kevin Williamson, which is like a funny kind of coming around. So I am pitching that out to buyers. And we just are sending Moms Like Us out to producers now. And I actually work with my husband on a couple things producing. So we have a couple projects that we're pitching with other people writing. My grandparents always worked together. They worked together and they were in the garment industry. And they had the greatest relationship. So, kind of like the way you and Kyle sometimes do, collaborate on things. I think it's both like wonderful and also kind of drives me nuts sometimes to work with my husband. It's a lot of like lack of separation between church and state, but most of the time it's really wonderful. And we really complement each other because I'm more the creative and he's a real, producer of many years. So, and he's working with your brother.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh. You must have, I think you told me that, but I totally forgot because
he has this amazing project with Teddy and so they're like trying to get talent and
that's so great.
Yeah.
Amazing.
So maybe sometime next time you're out here, we can all go out.
That'd be fun.
Something like that.
That'd be really fun. I would love it.
That would be fun. Amazing. So that's kind of, and then I mean, I don't know if I'm going to write another book anytime soon. It was, but who knows? I had a different ending for this book, and it's how I imagine the first season of the show ending. And I sent it to Carmen with like my first draft, and Carmen was like, "You can't end the book this way." And I was like, "But it's like it's not brilliant, but it's like it's great." Like, and she's like, "Jordan, I don't think there's going to be a sequel to this book." And I was like, "But there's going to be a season 2." And she's like, "Yeah, so you put that in the show." She's like, "We can't end the book on like a super duper cliffhanger." And I was like, "Okay." So anyway, that was it. But so Carmen nixed the milk title and the ending, and I have to say, I think she was right about both.
She's usually right about most stuff.
Yes.
So that's
she's coming to the book party.
She's yay!
Park. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
Excellent. I can't wait. Wow. Yeah. Amazing. Okay. Well, Jordan, first of all, also this cover should be like tennis bags. Are you making little tennis bags?
I should. Can I take a picture of you holding it so I can put it on? Hold on. Okay. I want to, this because I saw you at Shine Away. I'm just getting used to like social media and all the
no worries.
Things. So, and you're the master. So, okay.
Hardly, but
cute. Okay. Hopefully I don't have too many things open on my desktop, whatever. But this is such a treat. I've been looking forward to this. I was a little nervous.
Oh, come on, please.
Do you remember when I first met you at Shine Away?
Of course.
But that I was in the middle of having like
a hot flash.
Yes. And it was like broadcast news.
I couldn't tell. You knew. You felt bad. I could not tell. You just can't really tell.
You were so sweet. You were so sweet and sympathetic because I was like, I had sweat dripping off my nose.
You didn't.
I did. Like and like I went to the bathroom after and like I had to like peel my clothes up. Like I had such a hot, oh my God, it was crazy. I'm on estrogen patches now, so we're all good.
Okay, great. So next time I will not bring the squeegees and all right.
Okay. Perfect. Oh, this was such a treat. Thank you,
so
Zibby.
Fun. Thank you,
Thank you for all your support. I really appreciate it.
I hope to see you in person soon. Okay.
Definitely. Okay.
Bye. Thank you for listening to Totally Booked with Zibby, formerly Moms Don't Have Time to Read Books. If you loved the show, tell a friend, leave a review, follow me on Instagram at Zibby Owens, and spread the word. Thanks so much. Oh, and buy the books.